Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I am covering the subject of social anxiety, which I know affects so many people. Maybe you don't really talk about it. Maybe it's this like hidden secret. It definitely was for me for the longest time. And this can also apply to just general anxiety as well, because a lot of the same roots are involved. And I wanted to take a functional medicine slash naturopathic, holistic approach because the this is one of the symptoms and conditions that the conventional medical system really doesn't have a lot to offer with. The usual recommendations are going to be medications, potentially referral to therapy, CBT, but it's often just not enough. Maybe you've tried those things and they've not been successful. And with social anxiety, it can just be, and with general anxiety, obviously, too, this could just be a stress response in the system that has gotten out of hand and it's just become wired in that way. It could be your body telling you that something's wrong, maybe a workplace or relationship isn't in alignment, or it could be as a result of physiological imbalances like gut infections or all of the above. It's usually a combination of a few different things. I think any symptom is partly physical, partly energetic, emotional. So I will start by sharing my personal experience with social anxiety and anxiety in general. And then I'm going to share some of the underlying factors that can contribute. I probably had most of them when it was at its worst. Tips for in the moment, because I think that is an important thing. Like, what do I do when I'm having this like huge anxiety attack or I feel like really overwhelmed? So I have some recommendations for you. And then finally, strategies to build resilience and confidence in the long term, because we don't want to just keep relying on like solving it in the moment. It's like being proactive instead of reactive with your health. We don't want to just wait until you're really not feeling good to do something about it. We want to start as early as possible. And I have a feeling this is going to be quite a lengthy episode because I have a lot to say. So I would recommend taking notes, maybe saving this episode if you do know someone with social anxiety or anxiety in general, then send it their way. And I would love to hear from you if you love this episode. But yeah, let's get into it. My personal experience. I would say throughout school, I wasn't really anxious. Like I didn't really know what anxiety was. I would hear people talk about it. And now with clients, they'll talk about how they were anxious when they were like 5 years old. And I don't even think I understood the concept of anxiety. I was sometimes like a bit quiet. But then the social anxiety, and for me, it was like embarrassment, fear of blushing was always a huge thing for me, but that didn't actually start until late teens, early 20s, and it coincided when my health issues started to go out of hand, which will make sense when you learn a little bit more about like the gut-brain connection. And when I was working in my previous job, so I was just working in retail, I would feel like that was quite a triggering environment because there was just a lot going on, a lot of people. And even though it was like familiar to me, I'd worked there for years and years, there were just so many situations that would trigger it. And I feel like once a trigger happens, it's just going to like repeat itself because of muscle memory, this like trauma PTSD response where you're like, okay, I got really embarrassed or I got really nervous and anxious then. The brain thinks, let's try and avoid that at all costs. And then it just happens over and over. So it would be stupid little things like eating in front of people, especially because I was getting into health and nutrition at the time. I would take my lunches to work and I would have the same thing pretty much every day because, for one, I had severe food sensitivities. I had histamine intolerance. I could only tolerate like 10 foods. And for two, it was just easy. I had fatigue, I had brain fog, and I just wanted the same thing every single day to make life simple. So it was chicken, sweet potatoes, and broccoli with a bit of olive oil on there. And when people would like comment on my food, I would feel very triggered from that. I didn't like having a lot of people looking at me. I didn't love being the center of attention. At school, I feel like it was the complete opposite. I used to love being the class clown. I used to love like messing around and I used to do performing arts at the weekend, like a drama club, and yeah, I used to like have a good friendship circle and all of that. So for me, it was yeah, mainly like physiological, but then it started to become mental and psychological because of the repetition and the body's like defense mechanisms. And with my health issues as well, me having chronic acne, me being overweight at one point, even though I was a nutritionist, that felt made me feel quite shameful. I had hair loss, I had rosacea, I had rashes, all sorts of different things going on. I I never used to tell anyone, but I used to literally wet myself at work because I had bladder issues, like bladder incontinence. And I just felt like I was constantly hiding what was going on because I also didn't want to tell people my whole health history, and I actually didn't know what was going on at that point. So it just, yeah, was all a big mess. And then for eating in front of people was a big one. If a customer would have a complaint and I was doing customer service, if I like dropped something, spilt something, if I had to do a customer tannoy, that was always stressful for me. And at one point, it didn't help because to end the night, when I was telling everyone they had 10 minutes to go, I think I said, like, love you, bye, or something at the end. People obviously laughed because it was hilarious. But then I was like, I'm never going to do it again. I just felt so embarrassed. And then, yeah, people would always remind me of that. And PSA, if you ever see someone going red, please don't point it out to them because if you know, you know. If you're one of those people who has this like fear. I don't know the actual, I think it's called erythrophobia or something like that, like red, fear of going red. It's like the worst thing ever. So it feels bad enough as it is. It's just this like horrible feeling, is how it would manifest for me. My social anxiety, and then if people point it out, it just makes it 10 times worse. So we know that you know, but just keep it to yourself, please. And then it just continued because I'd start to isolate myself and I didn't go out with friends anymore. Definitely didn't go out drinking. And then I think it makes it worse because then when you do go out, it's like this whole big thing because it's outside of your comfort zone and your body loves familiarity. So if you can try and keep pushing yourself outside your comfort zone in the smallest ways, it really does help. The worst thing that you can do is just like isolate yourself and shut yourself off from the world. And then in my early 20s, it became around things like not dating because I didn't go out the house. I was just spending time with my mum and dad for like the first part of my 20s. I didn't have any friends really, and that just added to the social anxiety. When I started at college, anything like presentations in front of the class. At school, I wasn't too bad. I wasn't one of those people who dreaded reading out loud. This all came for me later when usually it's the opposite way around. People are fine as they get older. Mine actually started then. And the group at college was really lovely and like a safe space. So I felt like that helped and that helped me to start to like practice it a bit more. So I'd say they were my biggest points. And I do think these behaviors can also be passed down as well because my mum even said that she used to struggle with this. And she would sometimes like see me getting embarrassed or feeling anxious and socially awkward. And she would like tell me a story about when she felt that way. And I'm like, Mum, it's not really helping. So yeah, I think it can be like passed down. And when we're young, we can mimic a lot of our parents' behaviors. And let me see what else. I think self-confidence in general is very important. So when we come on to the recommendations and things towards the end, a lot of it is just about building your self-confidence and doing like personal development work and looking at your beliefs and the triggers, like what is actually going on there. And even now, it's still something that I have to check in with because I experienced it for so long. My brain can sometimes slip back into old patterns pretty easily, but I no longer resonate with someone who has social anxiety. And you're going to learn today why actually removing that label from your vocabulary and from what you say about yourself is such an important step too. I've been able to do so much stuff after working on this, like public speaking. I actually love it now. I held my very first in-person workshop last month in October. I've ran group programs for dozens and dozens of people. I've set up my own business. I coach and help others through this situation as well. I do this podcast, which reaches thousands of people. I show up on social media every day on stories. I've been on solo trips. I've met new friends. So much has come into my life after working on this problem that I had, and it can be such a restrictive life otherwise, and it's just no way to live. So just know that it's something that you can overcome. The goal isn't to just get rid of any feelings of anxiety, worry, or discomfort, because these can be natural, normal emotions to have every now and again. So they're not bad things, but when they're constant, chronic, or starting to affect your day-to-day life, that's when it's abnormal. And this is your body's way of telling you that something is off. So step one is always going to be identifying the emotional and physical roots. So look back over your life. Where did this all begin? So for me, like I said, it wasn't at 4 years old when I was starting like school for the first time. It was after school. So that is important. Like what was going on then? What was different? Start to question and look back over your life. And maybe it's for as long as you've known. Maybe it's when you started your last job. Is this a learned behavior? Were you told, like many young girls are, like, oh, you're just so shy, you're so quiet, and you just took that on as a fact? Or maybe you saw your parents acting in similar ways in social settings and you have picked that up as well. On a physical level, we also want to look at other symptoms that we might be having and our health overall. So if you have an irregular cycle, if you have digestive issues, if you have skin issues, are you on the birth control pill or acne medication? Anxiety can be a side effect to medication, so just pay attention to what you're consuming, both in pills, supplements, food, etc., and maybe start to track when it's happening or when it's worse and what else could be contributing. Maybe it's in the second half of your menstrual cycle and 2 weeks before your period, every single month, you are just a completely anxious mess and can't leave the house. That's probably telling me something's going on with your hormones and progesterone specifically. But working with a practitioner is important because it can help you to take a step back and start to see the bigger picture and also run some lab tests. Let's see what's going on a physical level. Because if it is a sign of a physiological imbalance, then we need to address that. Because if not, if we're just trying to meditate our way out of it, that physical imbalance is going to persist and it's going to start to manifest as other things. As I go through this list now, these aren't going to affect everyone. I probably had 95% of them in my health journey, but they might resonate. They're definitely things to just explore. And like I said, please take notes. So the first one is gut health and microbiome imbalances. This is one of the top things that I see because of the gut-brain connection. The gut-brain axis is so integral for any mood-based disorders, but also any digestive disorders. It can work both ways. So when we have mental stress, when we have worry, when we have anxiety, we can get the common feeling of butterflies in the stomach or tension, but it can drive things like slow motility, low stomach acid, and bacterial imbalances. But then the other way too, when you have an off stomach, when you have food poisoning, when you have parasites, it can cause a lot of mental health conditions. It can make you feel down, depressed, unmotivated, anxious. It can cause phobias and fears and addictive tendencies. When I was working at that job, it was in the grand scheme of things like a very low stress job. It wasn't stressful at all. It was just that my resilience was so low, my confidence was so low, and my body was so messed up that the smallest little thing, like a customer trying to refund something and they don't have a receipt, I would just be like, oh my God, this is the worst thing in the world. And there were times that I didn't even have anything going on when I was at that job. I wasn't interacting with anyone, but I would just have this overwhelming sense of fear come over my body. And I later found out that it was a result of parasites and mold toxicity. I just had constant low grade jitteriness, and my nervous system was constantly overstimulated because of these imbalances in the body. So for you, it might be parasites, it might be SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth, H. pylori, low stomach acid, leaky gut. Maybe you have undiagnosed gluten sensitivity, like I had, and you need to address those things. This is why testing, maybe a stool test for you or an organic acid urine sample would be the best thing. And the gut is so integral in all of the other things that I'm going to mention as well. Next one being inflammation. Let me go back, actually. I will say that I have clients who have the worst anxiety, no obvious digestive symptoms, but when we do stool testing and when we investigate the gut a little bit more, it's often the worst lab results. So don't rule yourself out as to not having digestive issues just because you don't get bloated or constipated. So point two is inflammation, which isn't really a root cause, but it's something to work on. When we have chronic inflammation in the diet, this can cause chronic inflammation of the brain. And we know that depression now isn't a neurotransmitter deficiency, it's not a lack of serotonin. And that's why antidepressants aren't successful that way. It's actually more of a chronic inflammation in the brain. And the people who do, which is a very small percentage, get improvements on antidepressants, it could actually be that they have more of an anti-inflammatory effect than a serotonin boosting effect. Inflammation can be driven by many things: poor diet, environmental toxins, chronic infections in the body, and things like processed foods, high caffeine or alcohol intake, refined sugar intake. So everyone is a little bit different as to what food is going to work for them. The foundation needs to be just a nutrient-dense, whole food diet. But there was a time where white potatoes were one of my biggest anxiety triggers, and I was eating a clean diet. It was gluten-free, it was blood sugar balancing, but anytime I had white potatoes, which was rare because I just completely stripped back my diet to like an autoimmune diet which removed nightshades, but then I tried in white potatoes maybe like once a week, and I would notice the next day, every single time, I was just so anxious about driving somewhere or something in the future or something in the past. And I eventually spotted that it was potatoes because I started to track. Most days I was anxious, but then there were days that it was just excessively anxious and there was no real trigger to it. And foods can play a role in that. They're definitely not the whole puzzle piece. Like there's more at play. And we don't want to go down the rabbit hole of like cutting more and more foods out, trying to find your anxiety trigger, because it wasn't the potato that was the problem. It was my body, my blood sugar and yeast overgrowth that was the issue. And another food for me was gluten. And I do want to give it its own section, which is histamine overload, a big one for me. My anxiety got so much worse when I was eating a high histamine diet. I was eating bone broth. I was having lemon juice and apple cider vinegar at every meal. I was having spinach salads. I was eating tinned fish, dark chocolate, avocado, bananas, trying to be healthy and heal my gut for the first few years. And my anxiety was just out of control. And now I know that for some people, high histamine levels can be a driver of anxiety because histamine is a neurotransmitter. So we need it to a certain level, but when it's excessive, it can just cause our brain to really just malfunction. It can lead to insomnia, even some of the other symptoms that we can experience with anxiety, the red face, sweatiness, heart rate increase, palpitations. This can all be linked to histamine as well. So it is another one that's more of a symptom like inflammation, but working on your histamine balance can improve symptoms for some people. I have a couple of blog posts on my website about histamine if you want to learn a little bit more, plus loads of podcast episodes from over the years. But some of the causes can be mineral imbalances, which we're going to talk about next. It can be that you're just genetically predisposed, but then you're eating too much for what your body can handle. You can have bacterial overgrowths and they produce histamine. You could have mold toxicity. But next category is nutrient deficiencies or imbalances. And then over the years, just with what I know, this definitely played a role with me. And I'm pretty sure that I have a genetic condition called pyroluria, which is where you just burn through nutrients like zinc, B6, and manganese very quickly. It can be triggered by stress, trauma, or illnesses, infections. And these nutrients are key for lots of things like immune health, skin health, hormones. So that's why my symptom list was a mile long when my health was at its worst. I've never gone down the diagnosis route because you have to come off the symptoms, you have to come off the supplements to help with that. And the diagnosis isn't super important for me, but it has helped me to understand myself better. And I just knew intuitively and symptom-wise, I felt a million times better when supplementing with those nutrients after trial and error. I did tests and they would always come back low when I wasn't supplementing. So I just assume that I have it, and it is, if you look into the research, pretty connected to social anxiety specifically, not even just general anxiety, social anxiety for some weird reason, and then some random other symptoms that can be very like key signs. If you have multiple of these, it could be something to investigate perhaps. But if you have a lot of women in your family, that could be one. If they all look similar, extra extra little flag going up. If you have pale hair, if your skin burns easily, and if you have social anxiety, these can all be signs of a condition called pyroluria. So look into that. I just wanted to mention because I just wish I knew about it. But the answer isn't just to megadose zinc, B6, and manganese. If you do that and you haven't done the prep work, it could actually make you feel worse. So please work with a practitioner if you suspect that condition. But I'm also just talking about general nutrient deficiencies and imbalances otherwise. B vitamins, magnesium, vitamin D are all very important for nervous system health. So you could simply have a magnesium deficiency. It usually isn't that simple, but magnesium is involved in muscle relaxation and nervous system relaxation. It's also needed to detox. So if you're not detoxing properly, your body is just going to be in a more stressed, inflamed state. There's this two-way connection with the body and the brain. It's about 80% of messages are actually from the body up to the brain. And then 20% of messages are from the brain down. So if we're trying to like meditate and positive think our way out of stress, but we have this like physical muscular tension or bad posture, we're not breathing properly, we have infections in the body, that's only going to be about 20% of the work. So working on magnesium deficiency, if you're deficient, HTMA testing can help with that. Everyone in my one-to-one package gets access to a test and my interpretation. I do also have a do-it-yourself mineral balancing course called I'm Balance on my website. It's available to purchase at any point, and you can get hold of a HTMA, which is my favorite functional lab test. And you can see what minerals you need and how to balance them because it's a bit of an art and a science to do so. But what I'm trying to say is if your muscles are tight and tense, that is going to be telling your brain that something is going wrong, something is stressful, you're not safe, you're not okay, and that's going to be causing the anxious feelings to happen. So it works both ways. But you can, I've had clients cause more issues from self-supplementing and trying to do it yourself without testing, and a client's megadose with methylated B vitamins because she read about them, heard that they were good, but then she was doing a multivitamin, a separate stress formula, and another B12 product for her energy. And just for her constitution at the time, I wouldn't even put her on methylated B vitamins at all. Like they are the preferred form, but she just wasn't a good candidate for them. And no wonder she felt so much more stressed and anxious. And then speaking of nutrients, another key nutrients that we need is amino acids or are amino acids and the proper absorption of amino acids to build neurotransmitters, which lead us on to the next section. Imbalances in key neurotransmitters like GABA, dopamine, epinephrine, and potentially serotonin can be linked to social anxiety. Low GABA is quite a common one, but you do need magnesium and B6 to actually create that. These are made in the gut. About 80% of our neurotransmitters are made in the gut, so another connection to the digestive system there. I just want to take a quick pause to ask you a really important question. Where do you want your health to be in 6 months' time? More energized, feeling comfortable in your skin and body again, excited for life because you're finally starting to see improvements with your health, or frustrated and depressed because you're still struggling with symptoms, which are taking over your life and stopping you from living life to the full. If you want the first option, you're going to have to do something different. After all, the definition of insanity is doing the same things over again and expecting a different result. If you're DIYing your health, meaning trying to heal yourself through researching, trial and error, wasting a lot of money and time in the process, then you could be sabotaging your results. Would you try and fix your car if it broke and you didn't know what was wrong with it? No. So why are you trying to do it all alone when it comes to the most important thing that we have in our life, our health? Trust me, actually asking for help and investing in yourself saves you time, money, and a lot of stress in the long run. I know you're probably not getting any answers or support from your doctor. I've been there too. That's why I created my 6-month signature hormone reset package. This one-to-one coaching package offers the highest level of support and transformation as we'd be closely working together to identify and address the underlying root causes of your health issues. Even if you're already eating healthy and taking supplements, there's so much more to healing, so don't feel like you've tried it all. Let me help you figure out what's causing your stubborn symptoms and support your body in healing naturally, which, in case no one has ever told you, is completely possible. Check out my website, which is linked in the episode show notes for more information, and the links to apply or book an enrollment call are there if you want to chat further. If you've been looking for a sign, this is it. Next, we have chronic stress, suppressed trauma, adrenal issues, could be high or low cortisol. They can look the same as well, by the way. You might have fatigue, and it's actually coming from high cortisol, not necessarily low. So when we have chronic stress, the adrenal glands are just going to be pumping out stress hormones. And stress is an umbrella term, so it doesn't just mean that you're worrying about your job or money. It can be that you have this physical infection, you have a mineral deficiency, you're eating gluten and you're sensitive to it. Those are stressful. If your body has been through stress, trauma, and you haven't processed those in the past, or maybe you have a lot of limiting beliefs, like you're not safe in the world, you can't slow down, you're weird, no one loves you. These will all mean that you're releasing stressful chemicals into the system and have a subconscious stress response running 24/7. Childhood trauma is extremely common. We all have it to varying degrees. There's big T trauma and there's little t trauma. And when our brains are forming, when our subconscious mind is forming under the age of 7, you being laughed at in class or being told that you're ugly by a group of stupid kids can wire the brain and trigger some of these patterns to happen. And they could still be playing out now at age 35. Our brain can even block these things out. So maybe you don't even remember it, or you start to go through therapy and then a memory pops up and your adult brain might not see it as significant. It'll think, oh, that was nothing, we were just young kids. But at the time, it's how you felt in that moment. Even if it was you just being laughed at because you said something wrong in the front of class, it might be something that's funny now, like whatever you said, but for younger you, that could have completely affected you, and that could be a little t trauma. And we want to also overcome negative thought patterns or self-limiting beliefs that can perpetuate anxiety. And we're going to come on to things to do in the moment, but the worst thing that you could do is get triggered, go into like an anxiety spiral, start to get embarrassed about the situation, and then just beat yourself up about it, because that is just reinforcing the negative pattern. What we actually want to do is look for evidence that the opposite is true. Because the typical response is, I am socially awkward, I'm such a loser, everyone is going to laugh at me, everyone's going to judge me, everyone thinks I'm weird. And then you're thinking of that as you're talking with someone or you're out and about. And then your brain, your reticular activating system part of the brain is looking for evidence. So then you'll slip up your words or someone will look at you, you think in the wrong way. might not have anything to do. They might even not be looking at you or thinking about what's going on. They could be thinking about something else entirely, but our brain reinforces it. It thinks, right, we found our proof, this person hates me. And then it just perpetuates and becomes a huge vicious cycle. And then we hide ourselves away, and those situations just become a huge ordeal. And yeah, we need to overcome that. But we can do the opposite. We can find evidence that we are confident, we have done things, we have pushed ourselves outside of our comfort zone before and survived, we've been safe. So if you do have stress, trauma, or unresolved emotions, etc., then you want to obviously work on that. It could be through somatic therapies, somatic experiencing, EMDR, trauma release exercise, TRE. I actually did a podcast on that a few months ago, so you can check that out. But definitely want to mention stress, trauma, and limiting beliefs. Hormone imbalances can be involved. Again, not a root cause, but something to investigate. Underactive thyroid, overactive thyroid, autoimmune thyroid, estrogen dominance, low progesterone, low testosterone, and common times that women can experience anxiety are times of hormonal fluctuation. So this is just starting to make sense a little bit more. Puberty, pregnancy, postpartum, and menopause, because of the fluctuations that's going on, the effect that it has on other body systems. But progesterone in women is the calming neurotransmitter. It's not the same as progestins found in hormonal birth controls. That is the synthetic form of progesterone with not many similarities. They're pretty like opposite. And that is why hormonal birth control can contribute to anxiety and mental health issues. The progesterone only pill, especially, is probably the worst. You would think that having less hormones in there wouldn't be as bad, but the progesterone only, it actually is shown to be like higher risk for anxiety, depression. So yeah, just putting that out there if you're not already like aware of the side effects of the birth control pill. And a lot of women don't put two and two together when they start the pill because it creeps in so slowly. It's not like the day they start taking it, they have a panic attack. It's that months go by and other things in life happen. Maybe the change of season as well plays into it. And they start to develop anxiety. And because they started the pill months ago and because they're not told it can be a common side effect, they don't identify it and they stay on that. They think it's their new personality, think that it's who they are as a person. And it's unfortunately not. And then last few things, poor sleep, sleep deprivation is just going to mess the body up completely. And those with the worst sleep often have the most mental health symptoms. Toxicity and environmental factors, heavy metals, environmental toxins like pesticides, air pollution, even mold exposure, for me was a huge one. My nervous system was just on overdrive because it was being poisoned by the mold. And then final one are toxic relationships and environments. So not just toxic homes with mold overgrowth. It can be toxic environments in the way of unhealthy relationships or social pressures. So we want to start to befriend this anxiety and speak to it like you would your child if you have kids or your inner child, younger you. Is this anxiety actually a sign that your job isn't right for you anymore or that you're unhappy in your relationship? Are you spending too much time in the social media world and not actually in the real world in nature with the proper lighting that we're designed to live under? We're just behind screens all day long. We're living such completely unnatural lives. That is absolutely contributing to the mental health epidemic that's going on. So start to get curious, start to pay attention to how you feel after watching certain shows, engaging in activities that deplete your energy, and over time you can find what works best for you. So solutions for in the moment, I'm going to give you a few different things to work on. You might find that one of them in particular is key, or it could change depending on what the situation is. Maybe it's a conversation with someone, so you can't necessarily do, unless you want to, things like tapping and shaking. You might look like a bit of a crazy person doing that, which will potentially add to your limiting beliefs when they start to look at you a little bit weird. But we do want to work on all of those things that I just mentioned. So as I've gone through, like get your gut checked, work with a holistic practitioner like myself, do a mineral or nutrient panel to see what's going on, work on your sleep routine, etc. But yeah, let's talk about in the moment what you can do, because when you feel stressed or triggered, the prefrontal cortex part of your brain, the logical part of your brain can shut down. And that's why you can completely forget what to do, what to say, how to act. And yeah, it just goes a little bit crazy. It can feel like time is just stood still and you're just like, I don't know what to do. You just feel froze and stuck. So it might be different person to person. It might be that one works better in meetings, one works better when you're at a party, one works better when you're having a difficult conversation. But number one is coming back to the breath. So it depends again, there's a few caveats here, but there are certain nervous system states where you're really in shutdown freeze, where taking like these long, slow, deep breaths just isn't the most suitable because your brain is thinking, we're in danger, let's get out of there. So activating like a bit more of an activating breath might be better. It might be better for you to just like do some movement rather than staying still and slowing down. But usually, and I found this for me, like paying attention to the breath and actually slowing the breath down, breathing in through the nose and really just focusing on the air coming in, circulating the body, releasing it out. You can imagine releasing any tension or fear, breathing in confidence and just taking a moment. You don't have to respond right away. You don't have to flee immediately. There's a really lovely quote, I'll probably butcher it, but it's something like between the stimulus and response, there's a moment. And within that moment is our opportunity to, I don't really know how to finish that, but it's like choose the best decision or act differently. So when you first get that like little hit of adrenaline or you feel your stomach kind of knot up or your palms start to get a little bit sweaty, just take a moment and over time you can actually start to create new brain pathways. If this has been wired for years and years and years, then it's not as easy as doing it once and then you're a new person. It takes repetition over and over and over again. But the breath is number one, just checking in with your breath, slowing it down, really focusing on that, especially if it's getting a little bit panicky and fast. Just slowing that down could be a huge one. Grounding or orienting, so looking around the room, feeling your feet on the ground or your body on the chair, reminding yourself you're safe. You can say it in your head, looking for things that are a certain color or things that you can smell or things that you can taste. Just bring yourself back into the present, because with anxiety, it's often about the future, what's going to happen. Tapping and shaking, this might only apply to certain situations, but you can even do like tapping on the side of your hand if you really want to. You don't have to explain like what you're doing. But then like shaking your whole body if you've just had a meeting or you want to go to the bathroom and excuse yourself, that's totally fine as well. Go and grab a drink and just take a pause and remind yourself that you're capable of handling the situation. But you might just want to like discharge and offload that energy that's building up in the body. A big thing that helped me is a pattern interrupt, and a really great one that's been successful that my therapist previously told me was, so what? Who cares? So if someone said something that was triggering or I tripped over and like could start to feel myself getting embarrassed, it would be like, so what? Who cares? Just brush it off. And that really helped me, like a pattern interrupt, make it a little bit sassy. And I also think, is this worth my stress response? Usually not. If I think of all of the things that stress is doing to my body, it's going to be lowering my progesterone, it's going to be increasing my histamine, it's going to be burning through my magnesium. Is it worth me to get all worked up about this situation versus my health? And I know it's not as easy as that, but it can actually help you to start to think more rationally and logically. And you're like, no, I've worked so hard on my health. I'm not eating all of this lovely organic food and taking all of these supplements for this person or this situation to kind of lose all of that. We don't want to be stressed about being stressed and think, oh my God, this is harming my gut or my adrenals. We just want to just bring it back to like what is the most important thing here. And is this thing actually life-threatening? Is it gonna completely is it dangerous? Is it worth me bringing up all of these stress hormones? And 95% of the time, the answer is no. Last few things with in the moment, focusing on the other person really does help. So truly listen to what the other person is saying if it's in a conversation. Ask them questions, take the focus off yourself, just tapping into your body and heart and just start to like slow your thoughts down and start to like be in the present moment. If you if it's obvious to them, because I know people say like, oh, they don't really know that you feel anxious and stressed, but if your face is bright red and you're like shaking and panicking, they're probably going to notice. So if you want to just say like, just ignore this, like, I'm okay. This is something that I'm working on, just with a smile. If you feel like that's going to help, it really does make a difference because if you see the other person getting uncomfortable with how stressed you are, it just makes the situation 10 times worse. So put them at ease. If you want to add a little bit of humor, that can also help the brain create new neural pathways. And we just want to interrupt these regular patterns just by doing something different. The worst thing that you could do is just add a load of self-loathing and you shouldn't have done this. Why have you done that to the mix? Because that's not really gonna be productive or helpful. And then we want to switch the focus to gratitude, either in the moment or just shortly after. Things that you're grateful for. So if it's at an event, I'm so grateful to be here. If you're speaking to a new person, I'm just happy to connect and meet someone. And most people are really nice people. So just remember that. People don't want you to fail. If you're doing a talk, people don't want you to crash and burn on stage. They want you to do well. And they're there probably because they want to hear what you have to say. And then long term, we want to build resilience because we can't just keep making changes in the moment and expecting that to be enough. We want to work on your overall nervous system, your HPA axis, which is your hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis, and your resilience to stressors. So not forgetting all of those root causes that I mentioned at the start. But then some other things can be practicing mindfulness, meditation. This can help you to just quiet that monkey mind and it can help you to stay grounded in the present moment and just getting back to yourself. And you might want to do like mindful breathing exercises or when you're washing up, just being more in the moment, slowing down, doing a body scan just to see where any tension is being held in the body. Meditation can be guided meditation or it could be a meditation track. There's so many on YouTube. There's so many on apps like Insight Timer. So just finding the ones that work for you, but doing some sort of morning and evening routine, even for 5 minutes, is a game changer. Number two is physical exercise. So this can improve our tolerance to stress because this in itself is a hormetic stressor, meaning that it causes stress in the moment, but it actually allows us to grow stronger and more resilient as a side benefit. So when we are low in muscle mass, when we have poor cardiovascular health, when we are just sedentary, that is lowering our vitality, and anxiety can be a side effect of just poor health in general. Number three is breath work. So more specific breath work practices, not just breathing and slowing the breath down in the moment. There are like breath work sessions that you can do, and this has really been something that I've dove deeper into the past year. I have tried it in the past, but I was put off by it for a long time. I just thought it wasn't suitable for me, just with my anxiety that I had, my nervous system dysregulation, my low blood pressure, because I've struggled with dizziness and things in the past and panic. Whenever my heart rate was getting up, whenever I felt a little bit dizzy or uncomfortable in that way, like fast heart rate, I would I would think that that is like a really bad thing and I want to avoid it. But with breath work, especially more intense practices, the goal is to get you into that activated state and then calm you down. But when I've been to the right teachers and tried it again, it actually helps my brain understand that that feeling is safe. And it's like I've done this before. I know how to get out of this state. I know that it's not going to go into a panic attack, and I know what to do to regulate it again. And similar to exercise, it's the hormetic stress where it's causing a little bit of activation in the moment, but it actually builds you up stronger and more resilient in the long run. Number four, I've put these two together, but hypnosis and EFT are really cool tools that I've learned and I incorporate now into my practices, my one-to-one program. There's a whole extra library of resources, loads on mindset and tracks that are EFT and hypnosis tracks in there too. But these can help to rewire the brain. So if you've identified some of those limiting beliefs, like I think I'm weird, or I've been told I'm shy and quiet and I'm really sensitive, and I actually don't think that I am, then you can work on that and you can change long-standing things, or just even in the moment you can do some EFT tapping to get you out of that feeling. Visualization, I've used this for many different things to help manifest certain things with my health, with my business, with my life, but you can actually do this for social anxiety in seeing certain situations that usually trigger you, common triggers, and instead of what could go wrong, think of the ideal outcome. What is the ideal conversation or interaction that you have? Or if you're doing a presentation, how could it go absolutely perfectly? And visualize that over and over again. Not just the images, but how would that feel? So feel into that confidence, feel into that peace and that happiness and that joy that you're going to experience. And over time, the brain doesn't know the difference between real and perceived. So then in the moments, it will think, oh, I've done this before. This is fine. This is safe. So number six is journaling, writing down your thoughts and experiences before or after these situations. When is your anxiety worse than others? Are there any good days? What was different? Reflect on what went well and how you can improve, being very kind to yourself in that. And then self-compassion is key. Treating yourself with kindness and avoiding self-criticism when faced with challenging situations. Reframe mistakes or awkwardness as opportunities for growth. Remind yourself everyone feels nervous or embarrassed sometimes. It's completely normal. And social anxiety usually stems from the fear of judgment. But it is true when they say people aren't usually like paying attention to you that much. Everyone's so very focused on themselves. And we can use phrases like, I'm safe, this will pass, I can handle this. And it will help just to build up your confidence. Working on personal development in general by focusing on your strengths. So shift it away from what's going wrong and all of the times you felt like an idiot to when are the times in life that you felt accomplished, you felt confident, you felt like really strong. And it doesn't have to be about social situations in general. It could just be in work or with your health, things that you've achieved. This will build up your confidence. Write a list of all of the situations that you have overcome before and you've ultimately survived. You spoke to that cashier one time, you made a new friend at the party, and think of all of the good things that come out of that. Think of all of the ways your life is going to be so much better when you overcome this anxiety. Start to challenge your negative thought patterns. If we have irrational thoughts of fear, shame, and anxiety, just begin to write them down and question, are these actually true or not? Or is it just that I've distorted the situation? Because our brain does that. There's so much information coming in at all times. Our brain can't handle it. So it generalizes, it distorts, and it deletes certain information. So you might see someone, as I said earlier, looking at you, you think a little bit weird. They look at you like they hate you, but they might just be thinking of what they need to do next, or they might have just got a terrible phone call about something going on in their life and it looks like they're upset with you, but they're going through their own thing. Or people get really nervous about going to the gym because they think everyone's going to look at them, everyone's going to be thinking how stupid they look trying to use that machine. They feel like they're going to do it wrong. Whereas, at least I know in my experience, I'm so focused on what I'm doing at the gym and trying to not injure myself, that I am just in my own zone. And people want to support you. So even if you just ask someone to help you or show you, if you're really not sure, you really don't want to injure yourself, or hire a PT for a one-off just to give you a rundown of all the different equipment. That can take a lot of the pressure off. We want to face fears incrementally. So if the ultimate goal is to start dating again and you want to find your husband and you want to have kids, that might seem a million miles away right now because you are just not leaving the house, you aren't on any dating apps, you're not meeting people. It could be that that is considered like your top of the mountain. But just to go from the bottom to the top just seems like a huge ordeal and it's just too much. So instead, we want to create these little checkpoints along the way. So there might be 10 or 20 checkpoints that you can work towards. So number one, it could just be going to a new grocery store, going to a new shop, speaking to your tram driver, your train driver, or someone that you meet at the gym, or give someone a compliment. These might seem unrelated, but they're definitely not. And once you start to tick them off and you see yourself climbing the ladder, you will get more confident in yourself. You'll build confidence, and then you'll start to see that you're slowly heading that way. So one of the steps, maybe three-quarters of the way up, could be signing up to a dating app. And once you've created your profile, you can tick that off, and then you only have to think about the next step maybe a week later. That it's like with fears and phobias, they start to like show people pictures of spiders or talk about spiders. Maybe you start talking about dating, and this is just getting it more familiar to you. And by the time you know it, you'll be at the top of the mountain. And sometimes we forget all of the other things that we've been through. And then because our brain is so wired to like always want the next thing, you'd be like, oh, great, like I've done it. And then now I want this and that. I want to like work on my career, or I want to meet this fitness goal instead. But celebrate yourself, celebrate your wins, and rewarding yourself for engaging in a challenging situation, pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone and overcoming it, speaking to someone, create positive reinforcements that will then create an association between the behavior and a positive outcome. So every time you do something a little bit scary, if you treat yourself to a little like nice coffee, an iced coffee, or a little treat, or a new thing that you wanted to buy, or you think, I'm not going to do this until this happens. I even do this with work. Like, you can have another coffee, you can have a matcha, but make sure you get this podcast episode recorded first. And then believe me, I'm going to be I'm going to be smashing through that podcast episode and that work to get it. But just starting to see anxiety, social anxiety as an opportunity for growth. And when you're on the other side, you really learn a lot about yourself. It can be such a huge like portal into spirituality, the personal development world. And you also become just a better person, I think, because you really empathize with other people. You become more sensitive to other people's feelings. You start to become a better friend, a better partner, because if you've struggled with that, you can sometimes pick up on other people. And even if you give them like just one supportive bit of information, you send them this episode, you don't point out when they're feeling like all flustered and going bright red. That could help someone else. So it has a widespread effect. But even just you listen to this episode, just take one little step after today. I know this was a lot, and I hope it's helped you, even just to not feel as alone. Maybe you would have had no idea that I'd ever struggled with this. And maybe you've been told the same, like, oh, I didn't know you're struggling, or you can't be an anxious person because you go to this place all the time. But maybe you put on such a brave face. And I know, like, a lot of people do that. Just know that things can get better. If you're looking for help with this issue and you want to address both the physical and emotional roots, then my signature one-to-one program, Hormone Reset, is the best place for that. We can spend the next 6 months together working on gut health, minerals, nutrition, but also the self-confidence, the nervous system regulation side of things in way more detail. The link for that, as always, is in my description box in the episode show notes. Spaces are filling up for the rest of 2024. So please get in touch if you are wanting to get started and begin 2025 already in a better place. But for now, I'm sending you lots of love and I will see you in the next episode. Thanks, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, I would love for you to leave me a rating and review on your podcast app, as this helps to support the show and it allows it to reach more people with this valuable information. Come and say hi over on Instagram. I'm at Viva Natural Health. And if you haven't already, check out my website, vivanaturalhealth.co.uk, for tons more free resources and to discover how I could support you further. I currently offer one-on-one consultation packages if you want my top-level support, then more affordable group programs and self-paced online courses. So there really is something for everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you back here next week for another episode.